picked up. And they've probably just released the little flap on the valve now and resealed the fuel tank.
Sounded like a tyre gun there. About to get fired up. Maybe they thought they were going to change tyres as well. Joining us also in the commentary position, David Oxton. Obviously hot work out there. He didn't get much of a run, but I wonder how some of these fellas are feeling, particularly in the Sierras.
Well, the Sierra boys are going to have the easiest run of all because they've got a good cushion. But now with the Pero Ravaglia Clark closing, Tony, that's when the race really starts. It's the sort of thing we're used to at Wellington. Dramatic finishes, really high-pressure stuff. But small hiccup in the otherwise perfect Eggenberger demonstration of how to win motor races there. And obviously didn't hold them up too much.
The order at the moment is still Ludwig from Ravalia, from Dieudonné, or Soper as it is at the moment. And then Seaton, Brock, Ratzenberger, Longhurst and Bauket. The first Kiwi entries at the moment are in 8th and 9th place, the two Nissan Skylines.
So just on half an hour to go in the Nissan Mobil 500, and that gap between first place and second place closing all the time. 129 laps completed class. Ludwig still in command by 49, nearly 50 seconds over Roberto Ravalia in car 46, the BMW M3. Steve Soper back in charge of car number 6, the second Eggenberger Sierra, a minute and a quarter down and 1 lap down on the 2 leaders, Ludwig and Niedzwitz. George Fury back at the wheel of car number 30, the Nissan Skyline Turbo. Peter Brock hanging in there. He's been in either 4th or 5th place the whole race. And Roland Ratzenberger in another BMW M3 currently holding place number 6. Just over half an hour to go in the Nissan Mobil 500. We'll return to the Wellington waterfront in just a moment.
Coming in the next lap. He did not come in the next lap, did he? I'm not prepared to accept that. When we show a black flag here, we require for the driver to come in immediately. That is a rule.
Three times you have to show. You did it only once. The second or the third time you missed it. So give him a chance. We did it. We get him in. What?
You are telling me.
Well, there's enough drama there going on, trying to read the riot act, but in the meantime, Klaus Ludwig has come in for his pit stop. The number 7 car. Customary pit stop, well-drilled Rudy Eggenberger crew. Looks like they're ready to go. Trying to start it. It starts. He's underway. So Klaus Ludwig, number 7, no problems in this year's Nissan Mobil 500.
Well, as you probably gather, there's a fair amount of drama going on in the Eggenberger pit at the moment. The first, as you heard, is over the black flag, and whether or not Steve Soper did come in immediately or not. The team were, in fact, instructing him to come in, so I think he would have done. But that's for the officials and the Eggenberger team to sort out. The other thing that just happened that you saw, Klaus Ludwig came into the pits with the lead car. Niedzwitz did not take it over. It was a little bit of a panic here because I don't think they were expecting it for a couple of laps. Niedzwitz was going to take it over, then he wasn't. And as it turned out, all he did was supply a drink to Klaus Ludwig, and Ludwig is staying in the car for the finish.
Thank you, Richard Hay. That report in the pits, and it seems like that point of contention.
Oh, but we see here on the
Boomer parked.
And that's not the 46 car.
We can get a look at just what that car is. We'll be able to update you. Is it the 47 car? It is the Sturmitz-Moivesen car. 2 women appear to be out of contention. They've had a little ding. Sturmitz.
They've had a little ding there and folded the guard over the tyre by the look of things. And Mercedes is in trouble with the bends again.
And she is very anxious to get the car going again, but she'd probably be better advised to get out of the way in terms of the place she's parked. They've had a series of crashes in recent race meetings. It seems to be a story that's going to follow her around, but she can't get in even if she wants to.
Well, she hasn't got far to go and change her underpants, Tony. The hotel just along from the car is where the BMW has taken over the whole show. So if she just skips the fence, and she can be into her pretty tights in no time at all.
Well, that's going to be intriguing to see if that guard rubs heavily when they try and get it restarted. She's keen to get going again.
Oops, problems here for car number 30. That is Georgie Fury. He was having quite a scrap with Roberto Revalia, as I recall, in number 46. And he's had a run on at the end of the hairpin at Air New Zealand. Managed to pick it up again. So Revalia, I would think, has probably dived underneath him under brakes and given him a little bit of the old farmer's treatment. There's Revalia. Let's have a look.
Just see what happened to farmer George Fury. And it was the Perkins home car. And a little Beamer sneaking inside and really leaving Glenn Seaton nowhere to go.
Yes, well, George really just got out of that. That was an anxious moment. Let's see whether that gets him up and running again. There's the man that caused a bit of the problem going through. Next one through, of course, the Bimmer, Roberto Revalia, and then Georgie Fury in car number 30.
It looked like the Alpha 33 Francio Toffoli coming to a rather gradual halt there as they went by. What I was talking about earlier was this point of contention over the black flagging of the Eggenberger Sierra cars. I think what it comes down to is whether or not they ignored a black flag at the start-finish line. They certainly did at least 2 laps before they came in, and whether it would have been simpler simply to go through Rudy Eggenberger as the team boss who has radio contact. But of course, what Robbie Lester was pointing out as the clerk of the course was that black flags are black flags, and you don't ignore them when you go past the start-finish line and one is shown to you.
Well, I heard the remark coming back from Klaus Niedzwitz by saying that that'll catch a few more before the day's out, that quarter. They were saying that you could show it on 3 laps. Well, I'll tell you what, he got the black flag 1 lap only, because the black flag was not shown the 2nd lap. They could query that in the law courts of Paris at some other time, but it won't affect the outcome of this race, at least by Klaus Ludwig in car number 7. It might affect 2nd or 3rd. Let's wait and see on that.
The car goes through. Is this Steve Soper? It is indeed. With the headlights on, trying to get a clear run through the traffic.
See a trip at Alpha again, is it not?
Yeah, still limping around. And Dave Oxon, I guess it must be a problem for a driver like Soper on the pace that he's on at the moment, trying to get through some of the traffic where drivers are getting tired.
Sure, Tony, but he's a professional, and what the good drivers all do is when they've got a bit of a hiccup at the end of the race, they leave enough energy in reserve to be able to sprint that last half hour. That's what they're called upon to do. Sometimes it doesn't always go to plan, and I don't think there's anything much more than Steve Soper would like right now than to know that he's got a half an hour and 25 minutes before him, and he's got a place, at least a place on the road that he wants to pull back. He'd like to make it another 1 to the polished Eggenberger team.
My race analyst, Noel Brady, informs me that not too much good news for Klaus Ludwig at the moment. Car number 46. Of course, Roberto Revalia is catching the number 7 Sierra at 1 second a lap. Whether or not he's been able to just ease it off the pace just a little bit, or whether they're conserving for home. Spectators making signals along near the guardrail. Everyone gets into the act.
Here is the lead car. Ludwig and Niedzwitz's car, which has gone so perfectly today, haven't had a problem, and catching them is the 46 car with Roberto Revalia. Let's have a look from the air and a helicopter tracking shot as we follow the Niedzwitz and Ludwig number 7 Texaco Sierra car, which has led virtually since the outset of this race.
I think, Tony, at this point, Klaus will be just trying to play a numbers game. He's got well, say 20 minutes to go. He's got this 15-second cushion. He is giving time away, but he knows, and this is how skillful some of these blokes are. He can suck Perro in or Wagner into trying to catch him more quickly than maybe he should do. He might just suck the little BMW into a mistake. And at this point, it's pretty hard to imagine a BMW out driving or passing, I should say, on the circuit one of these fabulous little Sierras. But could be just a tactics game, and he's got a cushion.
How do you think of all that while you're driving around here?
When you've got the luxury of a lead position in a Sierra with a surplus of power, as we've said before, that's what these professionals are paid for. They don't entirely get programmed from the pits. They're supposed to think with their head and drive with their feet.
Some race tactics from David Oxton as we watch the lead car.
Klaus Ludwig continues in the number 7 Texaco Ford Sierra. Roberto Ravaglia, who is having a great shot for the World Touring Car Championship for year 1987, keeping in mind he won the European title in 1986 for BMW. Still catching the race leader, but as David has mentioned, there's still a long way to go.
We just heard Emmanuel Pirot has just been telling me that the gap now is down to something like 15 seconds. Is that right? 15 seconds between Roberto?
Yeah, I'm just talking to him. I said him to try to push because we're close to the end of the race and 15 seconds are not a great deal. So I think now he's trying to push and trying to catch Ludwig.
Do you think he can do it?
Well, I don't know. He's in the car. I've done my job already. But the car are very tired at this time of the race, of course. Maybe the Sierra is more tired than our car, hopefully. And maybe when Ludwig will start feeling Roberto's breath in his back, maybe he'll make a mistake. Or for me, it's worthwhile to try to push.
What would the situation be with the World Championship for Roberto if you were to finish second or first?
I don't know, but I don't really know. But obviously, by passing Ludwig, you gain the first place, and you make him lose the first place, so you gain twice some points. So it's worthwhile to try to push, obviously.
Manuela Pirot talking to Richard Hay down in the pits. They've really had an exciting day down in the pits today. There's been no shortage of things happening, as has become the tradition with this Wellington Waterfront race, the Nissan Mobil 500. An enormous attrition rate and a lot of races won or lost in the pits. But the story at the moment is that this car, the 46 car with Roberto Ravaglia at the wheel, is catching. He is 14 or 15 seconds behind Klaus Ludwig. How well can the BMW hang on? How well can his tyres stand up to the kind of punishment he's being asked to give to this car? Pirot just saying that he has been on the radio telephone encouraging Ravaglia to pick up that place, and as David Oxton pointed out, that may well play into the Sierra's hands. If Ludwig has something of a margin, and he can suck him into doing things that are a little superhuman at this time of the race.
Roberto Ravaglia will be certainly used to pressure. The M3s have done it fairly tough against the Sierras in Europe this year.
So there's 15 seconds in it. Car number 7 is the leader. Car 46 will make that 16.61 seconds officially. And just on 16 minutes to go in the Nissan Mobil 500. It's all on as we hit the final stretch. We're back in a moment.
Ravaglia, having taken over from Manuela Pirot, trying for the big dash towards the latter stages of the race now to pick up first place. He's about just under 16 seconds behind, and it was closing. Officially they say 16 and a half seconds. The team themselves making about 15.
He's coming up behind Alan Grice, who I think is headed to the pit area. Grice and Win Percy, Les Small able to get that car back on the road, replace the axle, and presently they're showing about 10th on the leaderboard. So Roberto Ravaglia continues in car number 46. He's been able so far, and within the last 2 laps, to go straight past Peter Brock and straight past Alan Grice. So he is trying.
Down Jervois Key, the end of which he has that rather difficult left-hander that has caught out so many people today into Cable Street. I don't think it's going to catch him out. There's nobody approaching from behind. Peter Brock is not terribly far behind him, but not close enough to worry him. So let's look at where the leader is in relation to him on the circuit as we watch Ravaglia heading for the twist before the Drake sweeper. And as he gets onto the Drake sweeper, the race leader is Klaus Ludwig approaching the bridge to enter the front straight. And not all that much between them now, and I think that gap is closed to less than 15 seconds. Of course, bear in mind there's radio contact between the teams and the cars, and in addition to pit boards, they can tell them exactly what the gap is. And just how quickly he needs to go to stay in front. Revalia, of course, needing the World Championship points, being in second place behind the joint leaders, which are Ludwig and Nietsvits. If he can deprive Ludwig and Nietsvits of the first place and get the first place himself, then it changes the whole face of the World Championship points with just one round remaining.
Well, the gap's still probably about the same, 14.7, 14.8. Last time they went across. Ludwig has already gone through. Here comes Roberto Revalia.
Dave Oxton watching Roberto Revalia. He's catching and being encouraged to do so. He doesn't look to have got untidy at all.
Well, that's whatever happens in this result, Tony. Magic drive from Roberto and Emmanuel. They're just showing us that European class that we've come to expect. You see it more so here than we saw at Bathurst, because this is like a driver's track. The drivers are now very, very tired, and you see the ease with which Hero went by Peter Brock, and that's no mean feat. There wouldn't be many blokes that would be able to even do that. So a polished drive, but a professional drive from this man, Klaus Ludwig. That's how the 24-hour Le Mans races are won, by using, as we said, using the head and pacing the race right to the end. Manuel, he'll go like whatever he's got left in him, he will use now, but I don't see him bridging that gap, to be honest, Tony.
Certainly makes for a little bit of drama late in the race. We're expecting a finish at around 5:15. It's a minute past now. So 14 or so minutes left in the race, depending on what the officials decide was the official start time. Watch the aerial shot. The hairpin at the end of the start-finish straight before they go back out onto the streets proper with Roberto Revalia. Meanwhile, here's the race leader, Klaus Ludwig, who stayed in the car. Nietsvits didn't take over from him. Obviously, he has some energy reserves, or the car is handling well enough to leave him in good nick for the finish. We thought that they may have taken the opportunity to change drivers on the last pit stop. They decided against that. He was in the groove, so they've decided to leave him there and keep it safe. Klaus Ludwig, a superb driver, almost a household name in Germany. Three-time winner of Le Mans. Has been in IMSA racing as well. Very well-known name in Europe, perhaps a stranger to New Zealanders. We haven't seen him down here before, and not as well known as some of the Peter Brocks and Alan Grices and Dick Johnsons. Roberto Revalia coming up now on the Nissan SKYLINE, looking for a place to get past. The order is still Ludwig from Revalia, from Soper, from Seaton, Fury in the car at the moment, sorry, Brock in 5th place, then Ratzenberger, then Longhurst, then Bajent, then Crosby, and then Paul Radicic coming up into the top 10, and the BMW 325i, a superb drive. Tend to forget about some of the better Kiwi drivers in some less competitive cars, while these professionals from Europe with Works backing come out with enormous budgets and very professional setups to dominate the race, as was expected. Some of the drives from the New Zealanders and the Australians in smaller budget teams have been very creditable indeed. To get a 325 up as high as Paul Radicic has done is commendable. Nothing like as quick as an M3 around a circuit like this. As they go past the women's car, still parked where it was. Approaching the overseas terminal entry. Klaus Ludwig through the Drake sweeper on the waterfront again. We probably have 7 laps left in this race at this stage.
See Denny Hulme and Larry Perkins back there in 12th position. A great shame for the Colin Giltrap-owned Casio Commodore that was involved in a little bit of a bingle there in the opening stages of the race, and they dropped quite a few places and haven't actually been able to pick it all up and recover and get themselves back up into that top 10. A very competitive car with 2 of Australasia's best Group A touring car drivers. Paul Radicic just, as Tony said, they're in 10th position in the BMW, which he's sharing with Ludwig for now. And Paul off to the United States on Wednesday night to contest the $30,000 Formula Atlantic race before before coming back to New Zealand to contest the International Series here. A man who hasn't spent a great deal of time touring cars, but a very commendable performance.
This is the 44 car. Bill Grice owns the car. It's been run around in the sprint races during the summer season last year. And Ludwig Finau, a BMW mechanic, become a driver, combines with Paul Radisich. The car looks to me undamaged. They've kept it off the walls, and that for a 325i, which is nothing like as competitive, while it looks exactly like an M3. A very, very commendable drive for those two. And it looks as though the 20th car at the moment is Moiversen and Sturmitz, which is definitely out of the race. It looks as though we have 19 still running of the 38 starters. So the attrition rate could well be the same as it was, as bad as it was last year. Radisich and Finau still hopping around there in 10th place. An excellent driver combination, but here's our race leader, Klaus Ludwig.
Car 94, that's the Chris Hodgetts Andrew Bagnall Toyota Corolla, about to lose another lap to the Ludwig Cosworth. This is the car that suffered some rather heavy damage during practice, and some hurried repairs has seen it back on the road. Not the prettiest looking car, but however, as Andrew Bagnall explained to us, he said it's doing the job, all four wheels pointing in the straight line, and they're pretty happy with the finish that they are currently running at the moment in 15th position.
Not bad for an 0 to 1600 cc class car.
Excellent.
Forget about it in this race with all the big boys here.
It's not too bad at all. Although I think to give the other side of it, there are, what, 19 left in it. So. But anyway, they've hung in there and they've not had the best of weekends. Number 7, though, sitting right behind is our race leader, Klaus Ludwig, in the Texaco Ford Sierra from the Eggenberger stable. Superb drive.
I make it 7.5 minutes left. We'll try and get some confirmation from officialdom if it is in fact going to be a 5:15 finish. But counting down the laps, we've probably got 5 left as the race leader, Klaus Ludwig, keeps it well away from the walls and on a pace that is going to see him safe to the end of the race. Certainly none of the problems with transmission that were predicted by many people have come about with the Sierras, perhaps because they've been running well inside the limits of what they can do with the car, and certainly the drivers haven't been out there thrashing themselves or the car. In fact, the drivers out of these cars at the changeovers have looked better than any of the other drivers. Certainly it seems, Dave Oxton, to have been a lot harder work driving a Commodore than one of these.
Well, the bigger car, just by virtue of the mass, Tony, sure, it's physically demanding, but don't worry, every one of those drivers that's out there today, I can vouch for the fact they've earned their keep, even if they've only done a few laps. It's really hard just to apply that concentration to keep the car inside the walls, whatever. Why don't we just talk this lap out here with Klaus, watch the champion at work, and try and estimate his gear changes, RPM and speed. Very fast left-hander down to second gear in the little Sierra, and he'll leave it in second, back off a fraction, a bit of a blast up to the OTC, get her up to about 8,000 RPM, hugging tight on the rail there, just a nice line, fast line, tight exit, made tighter by that errant BMW, approaching the chicane in the third gear, clipped the apex on the corner of the wall, then doing concrete blocks on the right, missed the railing, up to the fourth gear. Very, very fast section here. This is where these cars really rock it. A lift, and then on again. Brake hard, down to third gear. Center of the road over the bridge. Inside wall, clip the apex, and just come out as close to the wall as you can do it safely. Winding it out now, fourth gear, fifth gear. 160 kilometers approximately. Feathering, turning right. Slow right down into second gear. First gear just going into Air New Zealand hairpin. Firing on that power. Up to second, up to third, back to second, down through the gate, line up, keep away from the marbles, keep away from the edges of the guardrail, up to third, fourth gear just going through the chicane, and hooking fifth, and the only breather that Klaus Ludwig is going to get, comparative breather, 200 or 300 yards down this chute, down to fourth, down to third. Down a second, Apex missed the damaged guardrail that everyone else seems to have hit, but the nice-looking black cars. Bumps galore up this little section. There isn't an avenue up this straight which you can have a smooth ride. And that's a lap with Klaus Ludwig. At this stage, looking like a winning lap if ever we've seen one.
Certainly he has looked smooth, as have Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné and the other Texaco Ford Sierra. They really haven't done anything wrong all day. And I wonder why that Bimmer has stayed parked where it was as we saw them go past again. As David Oxton has explained, it makes the corner a lot tighter, and they've seemingly moved lesser obstructions off the track today. Here's our second place man, Roberto Ravaglia, the BMW M3. Get a check on that gap. It was 15, then 16, back to 15 seconds. Changing around, but I suspect that Klaus Ludwig might just have pulled the pin a little bit and decided to pull out a little more of a comfort gap. With the laps remaining, it's not realistic for Ravaglia to catch him and stay off the walls. I don't think he's going to be silly enough to try it. And he'll settle for a second place finish ahead of Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné, with Fury and Seaton looking like a fourth place finish.
Here's another boy that's done very well today, Tony Longhurst, sharing the Bimmer with Alfred Hager. Tony, of course, runs with Jim Richards and the JPS BMW team in Australia. Came over basically to spectate. Oh, problems here. The number 6 Texaco having a lose.
I knew it'd happen, Mike. I knew it'd happen. Every time you say they haven't put a foot wrong and they're going beautifully and haven't done anything wrong all day, they do it.
I reckon Roberto Ravaglia would pay me a bit of money to put the hex on Klaus Ludwig at this stage, but he couldn't do that.
I'm sure television commentators have been responsible over the years for a lot of spins.
Look, if you're going to have a lose, that's probably one of the better places on the circuit to have it. You know, it's a low gear corner that's a little bit of room.
Let's have a look. Well, he didn't have much option about that. Brock was on the brakes and he arrived a little quickly. Poor old George has had to do the 3-card trick again.
Nice to have the kind of buffer where that kind of spin doesn't matter. So Soper perhaps getting a little tired.
He was lucky not to get involved with those other cars there, and in amongst a little bit of traffic, it doesn't take much to go and bash a guard onto the wheel and of course destroy any chances of a well-deserved third place at the moment, running in behind Ravaglia.
That's the time remaining in the race.
An anxious moment for the number 6 car with Steve Soper. Won't affect the outcome because heading down Jervois Ski, what will be just about the last time, is Klaus Ludwig. And this will wrap up the Down Under series for the Eggenberger team. Steve Soper, of course, taking first place in the James Hardy 1000 in Australia at Bathurst, and also wrapping up the Calder 500 a few weeks ago. Now the 7 car comes back into calculations with Klaus Ludwig and Klaus Nienswitz. That will keep their World Championship hopes well and truly alive and almost put it beyond doubt as they head to Japan just over a fortnight for the final of the 87 World Touring Car title.
People starting to gather now along the pit wall, anticipating a finish. Now watch the officials to see when, in fact, they're going to bring out the checkered flag, when enough time has elapsed. We made it a 1:15 start, which makes a 5:15 finish. 4 hours or 500 Ks, whichever comes sooner. And the checkered flag is out now for Klaus Ludwig. Robbie Lester waves the checkered flag, and Klaus Ludwig has won the Nissan Mobil 500. In second place will be Roberto Ravaglia. This is Ravaglia in the 46 car, coming down to take the checkered flag in second place. In third place will be Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné. Soper driving at the moment after his little spin. Still back on target. They'll take third from Fury and Seaton. The headlights blazing as Steve Soper comes down, taking the checkered flag in third place, and right behind him, George Fury and Glenn Seaton in the Nissan SKYLINE Turbo, with Fury at the wheel. And the wave there from Klaus Ludwig to the appreciative crowd who have watched his perfect race today nothing has gone wrong with this car. Some minor problems with the second Eggenberger car. They still brought it in third, and the only person able to split them up was Roberto Revelia, the combination of Revelia and Emanuele Pirro, who drove superbly in the little M3, which was underpowered on this circuit and outclassed in terms of outright speed. They thrashed the car, put it on the limit, and managed to take a second place off the Eggenberger Ford Sierras, who have finished first and third. They were expected by everyone to dominate here, and they have really gone according to plan. Brian Lawrence, I guess there's a lot of cynics now are going to be sitting around thinking, well, maybe they're not as fragile as we thought.
Well, that's for sure. We thought that perhaps the nature of the Wellington Street circuit may have been a bit of a problem for these cars. We've seen the diffs in the gearboxes Packers had, but financially it's been a very, very rewarding weekend for Rudy Eggenberger. Ludwig just about falling out of the side of this beautifully prepared car. They captured pole position with $6,000 yesterday, took another $3,000 for second fastest time. They also picked up at lap 75, which was half distance, another $5,000. They were leading at 100 laps. They picked up another 5. And now they've just picked up $34,000 New Zealand for a win, with $18,500 for second and $13,000 for third. So it's certainly a check that's been very, very well deserved by this extremely professional team.
Part of the Group A regulations state that you can't just take the car and take all the glory with the car. You've got to drive it off to the scrutineering shed. But each of the front 10 cars will be randomly scrutinized to ensure that they were legal. Remember that both of these cars are still running under protest after Bathurst and Calder. There were some issues raised about their eligibility, and Mike, I guess it's probably going to be a long while till we find out whether or not they were legal winners.
Yes, I guess so, but at the same time, you can't take anything away from the Eggenberger team. Thoroughly professional, great drivers. Congratulations to Klaus Ludwig.
Looking at the winner's style, Klaus Ludwig finishing the car, taking over from Klaus Nieswitz, who started it. Ludwig staying in at the second pit stop. Drove an excellent race, didn't put a foot wrong all day, and surely thrilled a number of people who came out to the waterfront. He flashed the lights and headed down to the checkered flag. And now these two, Ludwig and Nieswitz, have an almost unassailable lead in the World Championship points with 1 round remaining at Fuji.
Winner of round 10 of the World Touring Car Championship, Klaus Nieswitz. You must be delighted.
Oh, I'm not alone. I was driving with Klaus Ludwig. And first I have to say thank you very much for my team. Rudy Eggenberger built a very good car, and I'm happy to win, and it's a big step to be the world champion in the end of the season.
How many more points will you need to pick up at the next round to be world champion?
Oh, I don't know exactly. Really, I don't know now.
Okay, now what about Klaus Ludwig's drive out there in the heat today? He didn't seem to have any problems at all.
No, we have no problems. In my first stint, it was very easy to drive. I was very fast. And for me, important was to have a little distance, nearly 50 seconds or 1 minute, because we have to do 1 pit stop more, and everything was perfect, and so I'm happy.
Klaus Nieswitz, the co-driver with this man, Klaus Ludwig. He was obviously very, very pleased indeed with the wave to the crowd. And second place, Roberto Revelia and Emanuele Pirro. We'll get a word with them in just a moment as soon as we can, but look at their style for second place, and just think how hard they had to drive that wonderful little M3 around this horsepower circuit to try and split up the two Sierras. They obviously would have hoped for a win and to enhance Revelia's chances in the World Championship points situation. It was not to be today, and it now appears that the front two in the Sierra have an almost unassailable lead as they approach the last round. Let's see if we can get a word. In fact,
immediately to the grid marshal's tent.
Okay, see you later.
Okay, I think we're not going to get a word. In fact, they're putting the cars, all of the leading cars, into the scrutineering shed where they will be locked up under lock and key until somebody has decided whether or not they conform fully with the regulations.
So triumph for Eggenberger Sierras again in the Southern Hemisphere. Soper and Dieudonné won at Bathurst and Calder. Here it's the number 7 car of the two classes, Class Ludwig and Class Niedzwitz. They're the winners of the Nissan Mobil 500. Still to come this afternoon, the official presentations and a summary of the day's racing.
At this time, it has been absolutely dominated by the European professional teams, by Rudy Eggenberger's Ford Sierra team, and by the BMW teams of Arius. There's the cars all locked up now in the scrutineering shed so that those scrutineers who've been allocated the task can decide to the satisfaction of FISA whether or not these cars were running according to the regulations. As we know, there is some question over the Sierras resulting from the hassles they had with scrutineers at Bathurst. Whether or not the cars are legal becomes a fairly irrelevant point other than the officialdom of world motor racing, because as most people have seen on the telly today, they dominated the race. They weren't able to be challenged other than partially by the BMWs. And the positions at the moment, which are provisional necessarily, Ludwig and Niedzwitz in the Ford Sierra Cosworth in first place, Revelia, Pirro, Brancatelli. It was Revelia and Pirro who drove in the BMW M3. In third place were Soper and Dieudonné in the Sierra Cosworth RS. Ludwig was a cross entry. Soper and Dieudonné drove the car. In fourth place, Fury and Seaton in the Nissan SKYLINE Turbo. Fury having been joined by Glenn Seaton after his car bit the dust. In fifth place, the Brock Parsons Holden Commodore, the 05 car. In sixth place, the number 40 car of Roland Ratzenberger and Marcus Osterreich. In seventh place, Heger and Longhurst in the BMW M3. In eighth place, Bajan and Bowkett in the Nissan SKYLINE Turbo, the Kiwi entry. In ninth place, Crosby and Sprague in the second of those Kiwi Nissan SKYLINE Turbos. Running down to 10th place, Radicic and Finau in the BMW 325i. An excellent performance for that car. In 11th place, Von Lewis and Von Bayern, the German princes in the BMW Works M3. In 12th place, Perkins and Hulme in the Commodore. 13th place goes to Blomqvist and Gronberg in the Volvo 240 Turbo. 14th place, Anderson and Anderson, the brothers, in the Ford Mustang GT. In 15th place, Sorensen and Scott in the BMW 635 CSI. We have managed to get 18 finishes. 16 went to Hodgson Bagnall in the Toyota Corolla GT. In fact, it was Bagnall and Jennings who drove the car. 17 was Gulson and Gulson, the BMW 635 CSI, very close to the cut-off point in qualifying. And 18th place to Grice Percy in the Holden Commodore. After a broken axle, they kept going. We'll be back very shortly with a presentation and the prize giving in just a moment. Ready now to have the presentation. Let's go to Peter Williams for that presentation for the place getters in the Nissan Mobil 500.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along once again to another fine exhibition of motorsport around the streets of Wellington. And we're delighted to say that it appears that two drivers have been, shall we say, in a class of their own. It's an old pun which has been repeated a lot of times during the last 3 days, but Class Niedzwitz and Class Ludwig have certainly shown themselves to be the stars on this demanding Wellington Street circuit. Let me introduce to you now the representatives from the major sponsors of the Nissan Mobil 500, Mr. Steve Pryor representing Mobil Oil New Zealand Limited, and Mr. Katsuo Odati representing the Nissan Motor Company in New Zealand. Let's now award the major prize, the winners of the second running of the 1987 Nissan Mobil 500, and still the leaders in the World Touring Car Championship from the Federal Republic of Germany, Class Niedzwitz and Class Ludwig. Class and Class. Mr. Ludwig took them to the finishing line. A few words to the Wellington crowd.
I'm absolutely happy. What can I say? Wellington is a nice town, nice people, beautiful racetrack. We will come back next year, that's for sure.
Were you just a little bit worried about that last pit stop you had to make when you only had a lead of, what, 40 seconds or so coming into the last pit stop, knowing that the BM wasn't going to stop again?
Yeah, but that was planned, so we could play it pretty cool, and it worked perfectly. So it was a 17-second lead. Even if it would be only 1 second, it would be a win. So as I said, I'm very proud of my good friend Klaus Nietzwitz here. He did an excellent job in the beginning of the race. Fantastic drive, mistake-free. And the car from Mr. Eggenberger and the Ford Sierra Cosmos RS 500 on his Pirelli tires was just fantastic. And I say, it's Texaco time now.
Indeed, it is Texaco time. There's Klaus 1. Here's Klaus Mark 2. Klaus Nietzwitz 1:29.4 in the flying lap yesterday. Not quite as fast today, I don't suspect, at any stage, but still a magnificent drive. You must be absolutely thrilled.
Yeah.
I see your friends getting all the spoils here. You better make this answer quick.
What can I say more? I'm happy to be here. Everything was perfect. Thank you for my team. Thank you for every spectator here. You did a good job. The same with me and my friend Klaus. Thank you.
Klaus and Klaus, thank you. The champagne squirts come in just a moment or two. Now, the second place drivers. Let's welcome up, please, the man who started them off this afternoon, car number 46, the BMW Schnitzer team. Driver 46, the first on the road this afternoon, Emmanuel Perrault, the man who took the car to the end, Roberto Ravaglia. Goodness gracious, the Wellington wind's doing a little typical trick here. Just a word with Rudy, with Roberto rather, and Emmanuel. Well, you guys did it with just the one pit stop. Did you think you might have had a chance of overtaking the two classes towards the end of the race when they had to pull in a second time?
Well, we tried our best. Roberto was really trying hard, but our car is not as quick as the Ford, as everybody knows. And we achieved already a very good result by finishing between the two Fords. So it's something which goes beyond our hope, and so we're very happy. We won our class, and it's very happy. I mean, as long as we give them a race, we are happy.
Well, some consolation for you, Roberto. You've won Class 2, which I suppose you expected to do anyway, up to the 2.5 litre class.
Yeah, I am very happy, but the first position is always the first position. I think we did a very good job, but we drove on the limit, but I think to pit Ford was impossible because our car is good for the second class.
All right. Roberto Ravaglia and Emmanuel Perrault.
Why don't we have a miss?
You would like a kiss?
No, I miss.
You want a miss, not a kiss?
No, I miss from the kiss. A kiss from the miss.
A kiss from the miss. All right, you can get your sash, gentlemen. Let's now welcome up the third place getters, also from the Eggenberger Ford Sierra Texaco team, Steve Soper and Pierre Dieudonné.
There are the happy men on the rostrum. The winners, of course, Ludwig and Nietzwitz, Ravaglia and Perrault, Soper and Dieudonné. A lot of happy faces there, and when you consider what he was talking about was not second class, Emmanuel Perrault. He was talking about the fact that the Ravaglia Perrault BMW M3 fits into the 2.5 litre class, which is the second class in the race, but of course very competitive overall. We'll take a break and come back very shortly with highlights.
And across the line, it'll be the two Sierras coming down to the Air New Zealand hairpin. No start. Have that confirmed?
No, they're pride at time yet, so they...
One warm-up lap beyond the pace car. And I tell you what, they lit up. And the cut and thrust has already started.
Meetings with the BMW team take on a new meaning. There are times when some inside knowledge can be worth its weight in gold. Back out on the track again, and the drizzle has disappeared, leaving the late afternoon humid, but the track dry. The team are itching to get on with testing and rehearsing the vital drills of pit stops and stopwatch changes of tyres and drivers. Brock is sharing the race with regular co-driver Dave Parsons. With the single-minded approach and military discipline of his race team, it's easy to forget that despite their dedication to the success of the Brock Commodore, Brock and General Motors Holdens have only recently gone through one of the biggest bust-ups in Australian automotive history. From Brock's point of view, it's the down-under version of David and Goliath.
I think the truth of the matter is that it was the tail wagging the dog. And I think my aspirations weren't quite what they thought they should have been. So the parting of the way, I think, was quite inevitable when you look at it that way.
Did people expect you to fail at that point?
Yes, I've got no doubt that most of the people who'd left were told, A, I would not have a racing team within a week, B, the business was being folded up, and C, my business adversaries were phoning all of my suppliers and sponsors and what have you, saying, Brock is in liquidation. As far as I was concerned, I thought, hey, they've picked on the wrong bloke here. I'm digging my heels right in right now. I'm a pretty determined sort of joker. I'm not going to back off. And I haven't, and I think a lot of people have been surprised by the fact that we've weathered the storm and succeeded.
Driving a car that in pure performance terms is down on the high-tech Europeans is certainly a disadvantage. Brock had seen the writing was on the wall, but long-distance racing is his forte, and he considers plenty of other factors will come into play.
One of the great challenges about motor racing is that it's this discipline of stopping yourself from being impulsive, from making an angry, wrong decision, from trying to remain calm and in control of what is happening within your environment. Reading the road signals, looking at that spot of oil on the road or a bit of a cloud in the horizon or the sprinkling of rain on the windscreen, and trying to figure out if that means you've got to back off just that little bit, or does it give you an advantage on the other driver because he's backed off a little bit.
And nowhere has that finely honed line between success and failure been more delicately trod than at Bathurst 87. The race has a unique place in the folklore of Australian driving and in the ethos of Peter Brock. Without the backing of Holden, there were those that reckoned he was a spent force. But at Bathurst, the force was with Brock as he drove the doomsayers into the ground with a breathtaking but controlled performance. It was a sign to anyone who cared that they turned their back on this man at their own risk.
And towards the end of the race, I was driving around in the wet, thoroughly enjoying myself, really throwing the car around. And I came into the pits about 5 or 6 laps from the end, and people said to me, gee, you fitted those slick tyres on a little bit prematurely, because I remember the television commentator saying, there goes Brock on a set of slicks and he's sliding out there, he's really gunned the car out of pit lane and what have you. And I was trying to get the tyres warm, of course. And it was slippery for a few laps. And afterwards there was a bit of criticism. People said, well, Peter, you know, we think you made a bit of an error there, maybe you put on those slicks a little bit too early. I thought, well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but my feeling was that the other tyres wouldn't take too much. So I said to the Bridgestone engineers, look, how are those tyres that I took off just before the end of the race at Bathurst? He said, oh, the right-hand rear tyre was chunked up everywhere. He said it wouldn't have lasted too much longer. And that was the sensation I had from the cockpit. That's why I changed tyres. So I think it's pretty fair to sort of listen to that knowledge you all have that something isn't quite right. That's the way I work it.
The commentator is BBC's Harold Abrahams. This is the field as you see them coming around the first corner. We're just having a little trouble with that sound track. And you see the Germans well positioned at the front of the field. And Luigi Bicali is the man in the dark singlet towards the back. New Zealand's Jack Lovelock is running in the distinctive New Zealand uniform of all black towards the back of the field.
It's the German Botcher that's leading with Korn second and Bicali third. I'm so sorry. Lovelock is fifth. Cunningham's just come up to Lovelock's shoulder. They've covered about 300 metres. They're going round the first corner for the second time. Lovelock fifth, Korn's leading, and Botcher second. Bicali is running just behind Korn. They're just getting to the end of the first 400 metres, approximately a quarter of a mile, with Corn still leading. Time for the first 400 metres is 61.4 seconds. Probably won't be the official time. It doesn't look to me to be as fast as I expected. They're all bunched together with Edwards of Canada last but one. Corn is still leading. No, the Germans. I think Cunningham's going up into the lead. Cunningham's in the lead now. Just coming round into the straight for the second time. Cunningham leads with Corns has dropped back. Cunningham's leading. The German second and Lovelock third. Bacali fourth. God, it's going to be a race by the time they get to the last lap. Cunningham leading, coming into the straight for the second time with half a mile to go. Cunningham, the German, either Schaumburg or Berkshire, I can't see his number. With Bacali fourth and Lovelock third, Corn fifth. Now New, the Swede's coming up into the lead. Just at the end of the 700 metres, the Swede, New, Cunningham shoulder, Cunningham leading, Schaumburg, the Swede, New, Lovelock fourth, and Bacali fifth. Nearly completing the half mile with Cunningham still leading. Lovelock third. Lovelock's running beautifully. It's got a perfect position. Cunningham leading at 800 metres with New second and Lovelock third. Those two are going a bit away from the rest of the field. The time for 800 metres, I missed. I'm sorry, it's excitement. Cunningham leading with New second on his outside. Lovelock third, Bacali fourth. Corns, I think, is fifth or sixth. Corns fifth. Coming round into the straight for the third time, you'll hear the bell in about 30 seconds. Cunningham still leading. Lovelock just behind him. It's just the same position he had out in America 2 years ago. Let's hope the result's going to be the same. They're coming up to the bell. Cunningham, New, Lovelock, Bacali, Corn. Now, Lovelock's just running perfectly now. Come on, Jack. New leading. Cunningham second, Lovelock third, three-quarters of a mile. No, that's not. New leads by about 2 minutes. No, Lovelock's gone up to second position. Cunningham third. 300 metres to go. Lovelock leads. 300 metres to go. Lovelock. Cunningham's gone up to second position. Lovelock's out on his about 4 yards ahead. Cunningham's leading. No, Lovelock leads by 3 yards. Bacali is third. Come on, Edwards coming up to fourth position. Lovelock leads by about 4 yards. Cunningham's fighting hard. Bacali's coming up to his shoulder. Lovelock leads. Lovelock. Cunningham second. Bacali third. Come on, Jack. 100 yards to go. Come on, Jack. My God, he's done it. Jack, come on. Lovelock wins. 5 yards, 6 yards, he wins. He's won, hooray! Lovelock passing the tape. Cunningham second, Bacali third. San Romani fourth, Edwards fifth. Corn sixth.
And there are the scenes, the fantastic scenes in the stadium after Jack Lovelock's epic win in 1936. And the victory ceremony had the crowd saluting as Lovelock took the gold medal. God Save the King was played, and there's Glenn Cunningham, who was second, Luigi Bacali, who was third. Well, it was a fantastic moment there, James, but the commentator, Harold Abrahams, really got carried away like never before. He obviously wanted Lovelock to win.
Probably the most famous commentary of all time, and in many ways the worst, because he made...
If you go a bit offline or just to overtake the back markers is very difficult. So you want to be really concentrated, and maybe by the end of the race something will change, because it's very difficult to make a mistake.
Correct me if I'm wrong, did you say the track is breaking up?
Yeah, the surface is breaking up a little bit.
There's another incident to David Parsons, and the Peter Brock car locks up a front brake, then has to turn it very sharply, bicycles, through the left-hander at Drake. That's where Grice put one backwards into the guardrail a little earlier this afternoon. Inside rear comes off the ground. He manages to hold control of the car, and Percy was sitting right in behind him, and in fact Percy about to put a lap on David Parsons in the Brock Mobile number 5. Meanwhile, the Mobil number 10 machine is in. David Oxton is out of the car. Should be Neil Crompton going in.
Looking at the in the Texaco pit at the moment, the car number 7, the Ludwig Klaus Niedwitz car, lapping at around 134.7. And I think that vibration that Steve Soper spoke about earlier on is still persisting within the car, because they're almost 2 seconds a lap slower. So there is obviously a problem with car 6, even though at this point it doesn't appear to be that serious. They're down and around about 5th position, but certainly not making up too much ground at the moment. But hats off to Win Percy. He's doing a wonderful job out there in the Bob Jane T-Mart Chickadee Commodore.
Oh, there's a problem there for the second Brock car. It's David Oxton in it. David Oxton at the wheel, no one else around. He's under brakes there. He lifts the wheel. Well, he had a little bit of a lock-up, but I don't think that was the problem. I think it might be some oil on the rear tyres there. Certainly she's smoking.
David, exactly what happened there?
We're not sure yet, but we think it's support arm for the rear axle. It's just pulled right out of the body.
It's the Johnson Hansford car, and looks like the death knell.
Well, it couldn't go any worse today for the Johnson Shell DDB Needham team.
The news at the moment, by the way, is that Steve Soper has been reinstated to second place. In the official resulting, we have the Texaco Sierras back to 1-2 as we watch this pit stop with Grice getting in. There's a little bit of a delay there. Or is there?
Percy jumped out and went round the side of the car. Which is great, except Percy's doing a bit of supervising as well. Grice standing in the background doesn't know what to make of all this. Nope. The race for Alan Grice and Win Percy might well be over.
Pierre Dudonné is quite confident, but looking at that car, Neil Crompton, it's losing gas. The black flag has come out. They've been asked to come into the pits and check out that fuel system.
When we show a black flag here, we require for the driver to come in immediately.
You had
that is a
three
rule.
times you have to show. You did it only once. The second or the third time you missed it. So give him a chance. We did it.
It is the Sturmitz-Morgeson car. Two women appear to be out of contention, but the story at the moment is that this car, the 46 car with Roberto Ravaglia at the wheel, is catching. He is 14 or 15 seconds behind Klaus Ludwig.
Here's another boy that's done very well today, Tony Longhurst, sharing the Bimmer with Alfred Hager. Tony, of course, runs with Jim Richards and the JPS BMW team in Australia. Came over basically to spectate. Oh, problems here. The number 6 Texaco having a lose.
I knew it had happened, Mike. I knew it had happened. Every time you say they haven't put a foot wrong and they're going beautifully and haven't done anything wrong all day, they do it.
That anxious moment for the number 6 car with Steve Soper won't affect the outcome, because heading down Jervois Key, what will be just about the last time, is Klaus Ludwig. And this will wrap up the Down Under series for the Eggenberger team. Steve Soper, of course, taking first place in the James Hardy 1000 in Australia at Bathurst, and also wrapping up the Calder 500 a few weeks ago. Now the 7 car comes back into calculations with Klaus Ludwig and Klaus Niedzwitz. That will keep their World Championship hopes well and truly alive, and almost put it beyond doubt as they head to Japan just over a fortnight for the final of the 87 World Touring Car title.
People starting to gather now along the pit wall, anticipating a finish. Now watch the officials to see when, in fact, they're going to bring out the checkered flag, when enough time has elapsed. We made it a 1:15 start, which makes a 5:15 finish. 4 hours or 500 k's, whichever comes sooner. And the checkered flag is out now for Klaus Ludwig. Robbie Lester waves the checkered flag, and Klaus Ludwig has won the Nissan Mobil 500. In second place will be Roberto Ravaglia. This is Ravaglia in the 46 car, coming down to take the checkered flag in second place. In third place will be Steve Soper and Pierre Dudonné. Soper driving at the moment after his little spin. Still back on target. They'll take third from Fury and Seaton. The headlights blazing as Steve Soper comes down, taking the checkered flag in third place, and right behind him, George Fury and Glenn Seaton in the Nissan SKYLINE Turbo, with Fury at the wheel. And the wave there from Klaus Ludwig.
Europe then, 1, 2 and 3 in the Nissan Mobil 500 this afternoon. Klaus Niedzwitz started in car number 7. Klaus Ludwig took it to the finishing line first and got the checkered flag. A short time ago I spoke to the 2 winners when they joined me in our trackside studio. Klaus Ludwig, there was some talk around the course that maybe the transmission was going to be the big difficulty with the Eggenberger Sierras. Was there any hint of any transmission trouble during the race?
No, not at all. Fortunately, not at all. We had our problems in Calder already. This time we were absolutely trouble-free.
And Klaus Niedzwitz, as far as you were concerned, you didn't take the lead from the start of the race, even though you had the pole position. Were you a little bit worried about the slow start you made?
The second start was not so perfect for me. Okay, I let Steve go, and then I showed him I wanted to pass him. He let me pass, and I was going. That's all.
Now that the race is all over, have you got any comment to make, Klaus Niedzwitz, about the rather controversial actions at the start at 1 o'clock this afternoon?
Yeah, I would say it was not professional. Normally, when I'm at pole, I can give the speed. I have to be only in my position. That's all. And the race manager said I have to go very slow. I don't understand it.
Well, by my calculations, I make it now. Both of you have a 28-point lead over Roberto Ravaglia in the World Touring Car Championship. You're looking. Well, there it is. Indeed, they do have a 28-point lead.
Top fuel action, Steve.
Indeed, Brock, and our next race will be Dick LaHaye. Here you see his daughter Kim getting that 3,000 horsepower Hemi engine fired up. He will be up against a man who, in only his sophomore season of professional drag racing, has one national event win. That is Dan Pastorini. You see the black car in the background there. Pastorini winning the Southern Nationals at Atlanta earlier this year.
Well, these guys both have had very good seasons, Steve. Both rather under-financed competitors compared to some of the other teams, but they have come on very strong, both LaHaye and Pastorini. I would say this is very much a toss-up. Dan, of course, has shown terrific poise in his first season, and LaHaye, a real veteran. But in terms of mechanical backup, as it were, their machinery, probably pretty much an even go here. Because there's Kim LaHaye, Dick's daughter, as always, directing her dad back into the starting lights. She is such a terrific mechanic. What as they get ready to go here at Indianapolis Raceway Park.
It is LaHaye off the mark first, but only by 100th of a second. A tremendous drag race, but by just about a car length. It is Dick LaHaye winning at 5:45 to Pastorini's 5:51.
Let's take another look at what was a fine drag race, won by Dick LaHaye at 5:45. Here they go. A good lead by both drivers. LaHaye with just a slight advantage, but both straight and true down this excellently prepared quarter mile here at Indianapolis Raceway Park. And there you see LaHaye in the near lane moving out to about a car length victory.
All right, it is Gary Beck staging over in the far lane. Wheels inching forward into those electronic starting line beams. Both drivers using a hand brake for very precise staging control.
It's interesting that at 270 miles an hour at one end of this strip, this starting procedure where you're going a quarter of a mile an hour is almost as critical as at the other end.
Indeed, they're ready. They leave right together. A lot of clutch dust out of both cars in the near lane, just powering away. Gerald Gwynn goes to the semifinals at 5.40 seconds.
269 miles an hour to Gary Beck's 5:57, 2:55. So Darrell beats Gary on both ends of that ET and top speed aspect. Here comes that wildly radical machine of Texan Gene Snow, showing inspiration from both Big Daddy Don Garlett's small front wheels and the aerodynamics introduced by Gary Ormsby, Steve.
Indeed. In fact, those front wheels are an exact copy of what Garlett is running. They're a nose wheel off of the small aircraft. Now, Garlett, as you can see, his front tires are enclosed. Snow's are not.
Right. That is the king. Big Daddy Don Garlett's moving in there with his radical machine. So we're going to see a matchup here between two of these small front-wheel top fuel cars. Garlett versus Gene Snow. That is Buster Couch, the chief starter here, saying, cut it off, Gene. We got too much fuel leaking out of that motor to make it safe.
So this will be bad news for the rest of the field. Don Garlits will waltz into the semifinals. A bye run. Big Daddy's going to run it all the way through, though, Brock.
He sure is. He wants that lane choice. 5:53, 258 miles an hour. That's a good pass, but nowhere near the 5:40 that we just saw Darrell Gwynn run. As we push the Gene Snow dragster out of the starting line, there's that fuel leak that caused all the problem, the residue of a disastrous day here for Gene Snow, and a real disappointment for the fans who were looking forward to a matchup between two of the more radical machines here at Indianapolis. Well, Joe Amato, in a terrific race in the first round, beat Shirley Muldowney, and Eddie Hill fell to Ray Stutt. So Joe Amato on a roll right now, and a man, though, that after he won his world championship kind of fell on hard times.
Well, that has happened so many times over the years, Brock. That's why there's so few repeat Top Fuel world champions. Joe Amato debuted a new car at Brainerd, didn't care for the way it reacted, went back to his old machine for the U.S. Nationals, a tried and true chassis. Ray Stutt's in the far lane. You can see his car a good deal shorter, about 4 or 5 years old.
Right, one of the earlier cars in a sport right now that is in a massive revolution of technology with the small front wheels and new aerodynamic bodies.
Here we go, off the mark together. Joe Amato powers into the lead. It's Amato by a half a car, a full car, and more. Joe Amato at 550, 260 miles per hour.
And he will round out the field for the semifinals here in Top Fuel at the U.S. Nationals. That will bring together for the very best Big Daddy Don Garlits versus Joe Amato. Amato has the lane choice because of the lower ET. In the other pairing, we've got Dick LaHaye and the youngster from Florida, Darrell Gwynn. Gwynn with the lane choice and the low ET of the 4.
There will be at least a half a dozen people working on Darrell Gwynn's car. Not so in the Dick LaHaye pit. There is only Kim LaHaye here working on the clutch of the automobile along with her dad. The Top Fuel semifinals about to unfold here at the 32nd Annual U.S. Nationals. I'm Steve Evans along with Brock Yates in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that is Darrell Gwynn preparing to heat those monstrous rear tires. His opponent here in the semis will be Dick LaHaye. The two have met in the final round twice this year, and both times Darrell Gwynn has narrowly defeated Dick, Brock. And I tell you, this man, Dick LaHaye and his daughter Kim, they owe the Gwynn camp a cup.
And they might be prepared to repay him because he's been running very, very well here at Indianapolis. As you said earlier, Steve, LaHaye has had his share of problems over the years. Over 25 years of drag racing. He's bounced off a couple of fences here at Indianapolis. But so far today, that car has been working really well.
And we heard Darrell Gwynn say in a winning interview earlier that he is backing that animal down, as he called it. He better not back it down too far.
That's right. LaHaye, known for his consistency, very, very seldom makes any mistakes. Is a lot like Jim Head in the funny car ranks. Runs just straight up. Head runs the race car without any tricks and lets the other guy make the mistakes.
And we always see in the pit area, all these engines coming apart, they have not taken the cylinder heads off of that engine, Brock, since they got here, which is absolutely incredible. It may be the most efficient engine in Top Fuel racing today. Maybe not the most powerful, but using every ounce of it. They would risk burning at least a half a dozen, maybe all 8 pistons to get Darrell Gwynn after what he has done to their pocketbook this year. He has literally picked their pocket for $50,000.
And it's paid off for Darrell because he's got himself some new sponsorship and an infusion of funds. So he may be ready to tear a motor up here to move on in the U.S. Nationals.
It's a beautiful start. They leave absolutely together. They are side by side. LaHaye had a bit of a lead, but Darrell Gwynn drives by. What a drag race. 2 100s separated those cars. A 5:43 for Gwynn, a 5:45 for LaHaye.
And an almost perfectly identical start. Reaction times, for all intents and purposes, absolutely equal. And an excellent driving chore by both men. Notice that the dragsters are just pointed straight at the finish line. Not any kind of movement at all on the racetrack. Gwynn moves ever so slightly to the inside of the track here, but not enough to take that victory away from him by only a matter of a few feet. That is Joe Amato. That's the man that Big Daddy Don Garlits is going to have to get by to reset the stage from last year, Steve, when Gwynn and Big Daddy went at it in the final.
Garlits has struggled all weekend. He's talked about that. We've talked about that. I think the big break came when he got that single against Gene Snow. Brock, it gave him a chance to win easily, to learn some things. This could be very interesting.
While on the other hand, though, Joe Amato, everybody has been waiting for Joe to break out of that long kind of slump that he's been in. He won the World Championship in convincing style. Remember, he's the man that brought the high wing into the sport. And then all of a sudden, his good fortune just seemed to go away from him. He's always been there. Been doing a beautiful job, excellently prepared car, but just not quite enough over the past season to really threaten. This could be the day, though, because Joe Amato, you've got to know, has his incentives at about 120% right now.
That's right, and no one likes to race this man, Don Garlits, more than Joe Amato. He's told me that many times. He said, it may psych out some people to race the legend, not me. He said, I just love to race him, and I love to beat him if I possibly can. And this is for the final round. One of these drivers will race Darrell Gwynn for a whole lot of money in the U.S. Nationals title. Garlits with a big starting line advantage.
He'll drive on to victory here. A 540, 257 miles an hour, overcoming Amato's 556, and a late race charge of 261 miles an hour. Not enough, though. So, we do have a repeat of last year's U.S. Nationals Top Fuel Final. Darrell Gwynn, Don Garlits, a pair of Florida pros going at it here. There is Garlits' crew heading down to their driver. This giant crowd going crazy. They love the old man. He is one of the most popular in the history of the sport.
The Top Fuel Final, the last race of the 32nd annual NHRA U.S. Nationals. The near lane, Big Daddy Don Garlits. The far lane, his prime rival in this sport, Darrell Gwynn, both from the state of Florida. Darrell Gwynn has defeated Garlits on occasion, but never in a final round, and certainly not 1 year ago. Gwynn appeared to be in control of the event. Garlits has suddenly risen to the top as a favorite here based on lap time. Garlits has the lane choice. It's time.
But remember, Steve, it was during qualifying for this event that we saw Darrell Gwynn run a 5:34. Will he do it again?
Garlits is off first, has some handling problems, recovered. It is Big Daddy Don Garlits winning his third U.S. Nationals in a row, and what a job he did behind the wheel. His quickest lap time of the event, 5:39.
Almost at the level of the record of Darrell Gwynn. Gwynn runs a 5:44 right there. Good start by both men, but it is the superior horsepower, apparently, of Big Daddy Don Garlits that wins number 8 for him here at Indianapolis Raceway Park.
You a little stunned here?
Well, you know, we were really running bad, and we just couldn't get a handle on it, and it seemed like when we were at our absolute worst, we just never gave up hope, and the Lord just shined down on us and gave us a good one. He just showed you that you have seen a bona fide 20th century miracle here today.
Berger with Prost behind him. We've got the lights in the picture, the red light, there it is. We wait for the green. There's the green, the field move away. Berger moves smoothly away. A very good start by Piquet. Piquet's up and alongside, and Piquet goes through. It's Nelson Piquet who leads into the first corner. Berger is second. Prost is third. Ayrton Senna up to fourth. Alboreto is fifth. The rest of the field funneling through the tight corners, but Piquet has got the Ferrari alongside him, and the Ferrari's through. Gerhard Berger goes by already. Piquet second. We've got in the wall Alessandro Nannini in the Minardi. He's collided with something in this crowded opening lap, but it's Berger, and Berger moving away. Piquet second, Senna third. Prost has dropped to fourth with Alboreto in fifth place right on his tail. Then we've got Riccardo Patrese in the Williams and Thierry Boutsen in the Benetton, and then the Swede Stefan Johansson in the McLaren. But Berger, having fumbled the start a little bit, a wonderful start from Nelson Piquet, who went all the way round him and took the lead. Berger re-established himself. He didn't waste any time at all, and Alain Prost is wasting no time at all getting up alongside Ayrton Senna, but Senna doesn't let him through. So Prost down from the front row of the grid, down in fourth place, and not at all happy about that. There's even Capelli going alongside Philip Streff in the battle for the normally aspirated honours, but the Ferrari moves away at the front. Piquet second, Senna third, Prost fourth, Alboreto fifth. The rest of the field stalling along behind. There's Stefano Modena, who's well up. So he's making a good start to his Grand Prix career, but look at the pace of Berger. Piquet now detaching himself from the pursuit and trying to move a little bit closer to Berger. We've got De Cesaris and Chiva side by side as they go into that left-hander. There's Modena, and there's the Ferrari moving away. Piquet second, Senna in third place. A little slide there from Berger, and we see the start once more. And watch Piquet behind the Ferrari go all the way round it. The two cars were so close, I think they must have just kissed wheels there, but Piquet kept his foot down, and then Berger attacks back again and manages to get alongside into the right-hander. You just see it happening there, and the great clouds of smoke from behind, and it was tar, smoke and dust, was the Minardi of Nannini ending its race prematurely in the wall. Well, now Berger's getting away. Berger moving away, and once more Prost attacks Ayrton Senna, and this time he does it. So Alain Prost now, having made a slightly cautious start, as we so often see the canny ex-world champion do, he's now starting to establish himself. He's up into third place. Senna is fourth. Alboreto is fifth. Now can Alain Prost in the number 1 McLaren start to close the gap between himself and second man Nelson Piquet? Meanwhile, Berger is looking very, very smooth and confident indeed. He's clipping those curbs on the twists just after the start-finish line, but he's absolutely storming away. In fact, look at the lead he's got already from Piquet. Nelson Piquet can't be at all pleased about this. Ferrari power seems to be vanquishing Williams power. Nelson Piquet had the choice of an active suspension car and a passive suspension car. He found in practice that the active suspension car, which was built up for him specially for this race, was actually a second a lap slower than the passive car, so he's in the passive car, and he doesn't seem to be able to get to terms with the speed of the young Austrian Gerhard Berger, who is just moving relentlessly away from him. Now we look down the straight, and we see the Ferrari bouncing over the bumps, coming through the heat haze. The long lens foreshortens the gap, but in fact Piquet is some way back. There's Prost third, Senna fourth, Alboreto fifth, right on his tail Patrese, Boutsen. It's all very close, with a gap then before we get Modena. There he is in the Brabham with Derek Warwick behind him, and the Zach speed of Martin Brundle sneaking on the inside of one of the Tyrrells there. Meanwhile, Alain Prost, so stylish, so calm and relaxed looking, still trying to close this gap through the heat up to second man Nelson Piquet, the 1986 world champion, pursuing the 1987 world champion, one with Honda power in the Williams team, who lose it for next year, one with tag power in the McLaren team, and they'll have Honda power next year, of course. And there you see, after 3 laps, 4 seconds is the gap that Berger's put in after 3 laps. He's made up over a second a lap, a tremendous achievement. 1.5 seconds between Piquet and Prost, and then Ayrton Senna a further 1.5 seconds behind. So the field spacing out a little bit between first place and fourth place, but as usual, Ayrton Senna has got a tremendous queue of cars building up behind him. Senna always manages to make these tremendous starts and then has to spend some time defending the place that he's found himself in. Berger, Piquet, Prost, and then here comes the fourth place battle, the queue led by Senna from Alboreto, Patrese, Boutsen, Johansson, De Cesaris, Chiva, Fabi, Modena. Then it's Derek Warwick being dropped a little bit with Brundle on his tail, then Arnoux, and then the fastest of the Tyrrells, which was Jonathan Palmer. In the normally aspirated class, Capelli is second, Streff is third, then Alio and Dalmas are the 2 Lolas. But we're looking at the battle for second place, and you'll see that Alain Prost has most definitely wound in the gap between himself and second man Nelson Piquet. It was 1.5 seconds at the end of lap 3, but it's very much less than that. In fact, Alain Prost starting to look very, very threatening indeed. The Honda-powered Williams has shown itself faster than the tag-powered McLaren in terms of power and speed for much of this year, but Alain Prost is a brilliant man on any difficult circuit. He's very determined indeed. and he's certainly closing on the new world champion visibly. Alain Prost starting to put the pressure on Nelson Piquet. He may, however, find, particularly when the Honda opens out down the long straights, that Piquet is one thing to close, but another thing to pass. It may get quite difficult for Prost to find a route by. There is Berger going through in the lead. There is the battle for second place. In the background, weaving around, is Ayrton Senna in fourth place with an attack there, and a successful one from Michele Alboreto, who goes past Ayrton Senna into fourth place. So Ferraris are now first and fourth. Ayrton Senna demoted to fifth. Another Honda-powered car being humbled, and at once the Ferrari moves away from Ayrton Senna, he's got the Honda-powered Williams of Riccardo Patrese behind him. Here they come round to complete another lap, and the Ferrari of Alboreto moving away in fourth place from Ayrton Senna, who is still fifth. Riccardo Patrese still sixth, with behind them Thierry Boutsen, who's seventh, Stefan Johansson, who is eighth in the other McLaren, and right on Stefan Johansson's tail now is the Brabham of Andrea de Cesaris. Meanwhile, that's Jonathan Palmer in the pits. Palmer has come in, I gather, with a puncture, so Jonathan Palmer has come in and lost the lead in the normally aspirated category. That's quite a setback for him, and that will have handed the lead in the normally aspirated category to Ivan Capelli with the march. Still, Alain Prost working away to close this gap on Nelson Piquet, and Piquet clearly quite unable to do anything about the Ferrari that's in the lead. He's simply got to concentrate on making sure that he hangs on to his second place under threat from Alain Prost. And while Alain Prost did get very close to him a couple of laps ago, Piquet seems to have eased back just a little bit. So Prost's next problem is not going necessarily to be can he get past Nelson Piquet, but can he keep the Ferrari that is rapidly looming in his mirrors behind him? That is the car, of course, of Michele Alboreto. Still, Berger first for Ferrari, Piquet second for Williams, Prost third for McLaren, Alboreto fourth for Ferrari. In fifth place, still Ayrton Senna in the Lotus Honda, still sixth, the other Williams Honda of Riccardo Patrese, who's clearly settling into that car very nicely. He wasn't at all happy with the gear change during qualifying. He said that was one thing which wasn't as good on the Williams as he was used to on the Brabham. But what really impressed him was the relentless delivery of power. This is the view from de Cesaris' Brabham, looking back at Teo Fabi, who's closing on the 9th place de Cesaris. Eddie Cheever's already gone past him into 8th place, so Fabi now attacking, and Fabi goes by. So de Cesaris there demoted to 10th place. His own teammate Stefano Modena is 11th. Here's a Williams being chased by a McLaren, but it's not Piquet and Prost this time. It's Riccardo Patrese with Stefan Johansson getting very, very close to him indeed. So Patrese is under just the same sort of pressure from Johansson that Piquet, his teammate, is under from Alain Prost. There you see the gaps. It's 6.7 seconds between Berger and Piquet, and what's that, 1.5 seconds still between Piquet and Prost. But Patrese in 6th place is under very real pressure now. As Patrese struggles to close on 5th man Ayrton Senna, he is in turn being pushed by the 7th place McLaren of Stefan Johansson. Gerhard Berger, very much a man who I think is going to be near the top of the championship table for some seasons to come. Signed, of course, to continue with Ferrari next year, and it seems that he's arrived at Ferrari at absolutely the right time, because the influence of John Barnard is now starting to be felt, and indeed the influence of Harvey Postlethwaite, the English designer who's been with Ferrari for some seasons now, and whose efforts now are at last starting to bear fruit. A beautifully sorted car. There's a fastest lap for another Ferrari driver, Michele Alboreto now. So the two Ferraris are the two fastest cars on the track at the moment. Michele Alboreto, who is of course down in 4th place, but starting to put the pressure on Alain Prost, who is 3rd, still Nelson Piquet 2nd, still this car we're watching, this shining red Ferrari, Gerhard Berger at the wheel, dominating the race. And there's a pit stop for Teo Fabi. Teo Fabi's come in the Benetton for a tyre stop, and that will have dropped him out of the top 10. In fact, he's going to rejoin just as he comes out, in fact, just in front of Stefano Modena. And Modena has also lost some places recently, so that puts Fabi into 13th place, and Modena, just out of the picture now, is 14th in Brabham number 7, and he's got the Zach speed of Christian Danner right on his tail, and just behind Danner is Ivan Capelli, who is still leading the normally aspirated class in 16th place. Once more we watch Berger complete another lap, looking so smooth, just clipping that curb a little bit. And there's another fastest lap for him. That's still 1.8 seconds slower than Nelson Piquet's existing record, but of course we're still early in the race. He did that on lap 16, and there's still a lot of fuel on board, and I think as Berger continues to get into the groove, he'll find he can go a lot faster than that.
And we'll have highlights of the rest of the Australian Grand Prix at around 5.
They are, and there you see the gap back to Senna, and there you can get an idea of the trio, and that's Modena into the pits. Modena getting fresh tyres, the first tyre stop of his young Formula One career, and out he comes again, accelerating down the pit lane. That will have dropped him back a little bit, and he comes back out behind one of the Tyrrells, and just in front of the leader, in fact. Oh, what a nasty moment there. He clipped the curb on his cold tyres, a little sideways slide, but he had it all together. He coped with it very quickly, and it's just as well he did, because the leader, the Gerhard Berger Ferrari, was just coming up behind him, and I can just imagine what the Italian newspapers would have said on Monday morning if the young Italian debutant Modena had got in the way of the leading Ferrari. We're going to see it again. He goes understeering on his cold tyres, up the curb, the car flicks sideways, he corrects it very quickly, just as Gerhard Berger goes past him. There's Modena with the second-placed Williams Honda of Nelson Piquet right on his tail. Modena keeps very well out of the way, very sensible boy. He'll earn some points for that. And there comes Prost behind him. At once Modena moves to the right of the road, because the corner that follows is a left-hander, and that's allowed Prost to go safely through as well. Still Piquet managing to keep this little cushion back to Alain Prost. Still Alain Prost trying to close, very anxious to get to grips with the Williams Honda in front of him, but apparently not quite able to do so. And meanwhile, the Ferrari of Alboreto, which had got a lot closer to Alain Prost and got quite threatening, has slipped back a little bit. Prost gathering himself, I think, for another effort, and the Ferrari way back and out of touch with Prost at the moment in 4th place. Ferrari's 1st and 4th, Williams Honda 2nd, McLaren Tag 3rd, and a Williams Honda in 6th place, a Lotus Honda in 5th place. That's Ayrton Senna. Yes, and Prost is very definitely closing now. Prost, having had a little bit of a rest, having just thought about it for a few laps, suddenly has come up to fasten himself on the tail of Piquet. Meanwhile, here's problems for Martin Brundle, and the Zach speed completely disappearing in a cloud of smoke as Martin Brundle parks it well clear of the road, up against the wall. So once again, Martin Brundle's race comes to an end, and in all this season, poor Martin Brundle has only scored one championship point finish. He was 5th at Imola in the 2nd round, and he's been out of the points ever since. It hasn't been a good season at all for him or for the Zach Speed team, because Christian Danner has yet to finish in the top 6. And now Piquet seems to have responded a little bit. Just as Prost gets closer, so Piquet responds, and that must be very demoralizing for Prost. He works away and works away, makes up a few yards here and a few yards there. And then as Piquet sees him creep closer, Piquet's able to move away. This is the cockpit view of Satoru Nakajima, and he's coming extremely slowly into the pits. He's obviously got problems with Lotus number 11. Nakajima, who's been running back in 14th place. The Lotus mechanics and the Honda mechanics all going to work on the car, but the smoke, that doesn't look very healthy at all. So it doesn't look as though it's going to be Nakajima's day. He was able to finish in the points and was delighted to do so 2 weeks ago in his home Grand Prix in Japan. But it doesn't look as though he's going to repeat that feat here today. And we're back with the second place battle, and now they have closed up because Prost getting closer to Piquet again and Alboreto getting closer to Prost. So it seems to vary all the time depending on where the back markers are. Piquet's able to make an effort and move away from Prost, but he isn't able to keep it up, and then Prost will creep closer once more. And Piquet seems to have given up all thoughts of pursuing Gerhard Berger. He's just driving to defend this second place. And they are coming up to quite a gaggle of back markers now. Several normally aspirated cars soon to be passed. And this may allow Prost to get a little bit closer to Piquet. Alternatively, it may allow Piquet the chance to get clear. Fastest lap for Stefan Johansson. That's the second time this race we've seen a fastest lap for him. The time's coming down, 1:22.561. The existing lap record is, however, 1:20.7. And Senna, the only remaining Lotus Honda in the race, running a slightly lonely race now because behind him, Patrese is under real threat from Johansson, and he has let Senna get away. In fact, Johansson has got past Patrese. You can see Johansson just coming up to lap the Tyrrell of Jonathan Palmer there, but Stefan Johansson has got past the Williams Honda and has got well clear. There he is lapping Jonathan Palmer, who tucks in behind to try and get a little bit of a tow from the turbocharged car that's just blasted by. And into the pits for the second time, Teo Fabi. Fabi comes in once more. Is it just going to be tyres? They're changing the tyres anyway, but I think there's something else that they've got to do. Yes, it's looking a little bit slow. They're starting to work on that car, and here you see the second place battle starting to get well in among the back markers. Roberto Moreno has just been lapped by Prost, and he's got the Ferrari behind him of Alboreto. Alboreto just getting up alongside Moreno, but I don't think he got through then. No, he didn't. So Roberto Moreno in the AGS has unwittingly delayed Alboreto for a little bit. Adrian Campos, meanwhile, almost comes to a halt in the Minardi to let Piquet and Prost get by. And I think that Prost it is who's benefited from that little bit of overtaking, because Alboreto was delayed and Prost has got very close indeed to Piquet. They've got the two Lolas ahead of them of Alio and Dalmas, who are running close together. Now Piquet out of Dalmas's slipstream, storms by. Is he going to get past Alio? Yes, he does Alio as well, as the blue flags wave, and Piquet squeezes on the inside of Alio just as Prost squeezes on the inside of Dalmas. So Alio splitting Piquet and Prost. Prost has been a little bit delayed there for the moment. Meanwhile, the Ferrari is not far behind. There it is, a glimpse at the top of the screen of Michele Alboreto as the turbos work their way past the normally aspirated cars. Now Prost is stuck behind Alio, and stuck behind Dalmas is Alboreto, so all of that has given Nelson Piquet a little bit of breathing space. Oh, and Prost right off. Prost put well off his stroke there as he was trying to go past Alio, and that has delayed Prost, and the Ferrari's up there with him, and oh, Alboreto so nearly got past Prost there. He was trying to take advantage of the fact that Prost was delayed. Prost attacking Alio, goes wide, goes bouncing way up into the air over the curbs, comes back in front of Dalmas, and Alboreto tried to make that the moment that he could go past Prost. He very nearly did it, locked up a brake going into the tight right-hander, but he's now right with Alain Prost, and Alain Prost is under real threat from Alboreto now. Piquet's got away, and now Prost has got to use all of his skill to keep Alboreto behind him, and that's Modena back in the pits. Prost goes by the Alio Lola, and so does Alboreto. In fact, Alboreto had a little think about trying to go past Prost at the same time, but he couldn't really do that. Prost had the situation in hand. So Alio now is passed, and Ayrton Senna is right up there with them. So in all this exciting lappery, Ayrton Senna has closed up. Piquet has got away. It's still, of course, Berger in the lead. 1:22.3, Berger's new fastest lap, 102.7 miles an hour. Piquet has got a little bit of a breathing space in second place with the Williams Honda. Here's the battle for third, with Prost just ahead of Alboreto and Ayrton Senna starting to look a little bit threatening. Oh, and that's a horrible nonsense between the two Benettons as Thierry Boutsen tried to go past Theo Fabi, lapping him after Fabi's 2 pit stops, and went up the escape road. And Alain Prost has now set fastest lap. Alain Prost, responding to the pressure from Michele Alboreto, has now come storming up to catch up again on Nelson Piquet. We were just wondering whether Prost had damaged anything on the McLaren in that great bouncing drive over the curves just after the start-finish line, but clearly he hasn't, because he's shaken off Alboreto, he's closed back up to Nelson Piquet again, and he's set the current fastest lap. Second, third, fourth and fifth are therefore all now running pretty close. There's Piquet second, there's Prost in third place, Alboreto in fourth place, Ayrton Senna in a closing fifth. So Ayrton Senna starting to make a bit of a charge. Remember how he went in the Italian Grand Prix when suddenly he seemed to come almost from nowhere, and it's Piquet in the pits. Nelson Piquet into the pits, a tyre change for the Williams Honda. This wasn't expected. We thought that the faster men would go all the way without a stop, and it's off the jacks, and away goes Nelson Piquet storming down the pit lane. Ooh, scattering mechanics, because Modena's car is just being wheeled to one side. Michele Alboreto set a new fastest lap, and there's Nelson Piquet storming out again on his new tyres. I should think he got the tyres warmed up just as he went down the pit lane. So Piquet has dropped out of second place. We've therefore got Alain Prost second, Michele Alboreto third, running 1.4 seconds apart at this stage. Ayrton Senna is in fourth place, another 1.5 seconds behind Alboreto, but Gerhard Berger's lead is now 16 seconds, with Stefan Johansson in fifth place, and Nelson Piquet has rejoined 35 seconds behind the leader in sixth place. So I think Boutsen will have gone through, but there it's off the jacks, out he comes. Oh, and the car faltering a little bit. I think he just got it on the rev limiter briefly there. He's not used to that particular engine, but out comes Riccardo Patrese, the most experienced man currently in Formula One racing, with I think 160 Grand Prix under his belt. But Patrese back in the race, and indeed he's dropped one place. Patrese down to 8th, Thierry Boutsen up to 7th with the Benetton. And once more, we're with this leader, Gerhard Berger, still looking so smooth and so clean. The car barely seems to have a speck of oil on it anywhere. And he's storming through the back markers like a good one, and still keeping the pressure on. You can see that car's going quickly. Oh, and that was Alboreto absolutely alongside Prost, and Senna's gone through as well. That was an extraordinary moment as Alain Prost came up to lap one of the Ligiers. It was René Arnoux. Suddenly Senna was one side, Michele Alboreto was the other, and Senna has gone all the way past both Alboreto and Alain Prost, and Alboreto's gone past him too. That was the most amazing piece of opportunist driving by Ayrton Senna. So suddenly Ayrton Senna has found himself in second place. Alboreto is third, and down to fourth goes Alain Prost. That was an incredible piece of driving by Ayrton Senna. The blue flag's waving for René Arnoux, who's never an easy man to lap, and Michele Alboreto is in fact still stuck behind him. Alain Prost right up underneath the Ferrari's rear wing, and no doubt absolutely furious, and in fact Prost coming back just as Ayrton Senna laps Eddie Cheever. Alain Prost side by side. Oh, and late braking there for the Ferrari that moves across and tries to close the door, and does so. So Alain Prost, who was right alongside the Ferrari to try and get third place back. Alboreto kept the door shut, left his braking very late. The Ferrari was weaving around all over the place, but he's still there. This is fantastic Grand Prix racing of the highest standard. Ayrton Senna up to second place for Honda, and Alboreto up to third for Ferrari. So Ferrari's first and third once more, but Alain Prost demoted down to fourth place, and there's still a lot of traffic about, with Eddie Cheever, the next man to be lapped by Michele Alboreto. Once more, Adrian Campos was keeping way out of everybody's way. Cheever is passed and lapped by Alboreto, and now Prost gets by again, but Alboreto has got away. So, Ayrton Senna up to second place. Alboreto up to third again. Alain Prost down to fourth. In fifth place now, it's Stefan Johansson, so fourth and fifth are the two McLarens. In sixth place, it's Nelson Piquet, so the Piquet Williams is in sixth place, the Patrese Williams is eighth. Both of those two cars having made apparently routine tyre stops just around the half distance, and between them, in seventh place, is Thierry Boutsen in the Benetton. Theo Fabi in the other Benetton has dropped way out of the reckoning. Well, if the Williams Hondas had to stop for tyres, we just wonder whether the Ferraris will have to. We're sure that Ayrton Senna won't, because Ayrton Senna's made such a practice in several races this year of being able to go longer on the same set of tyres than anybody else. The active suspension on the Lotus obviously helps, and Michele Alboreto fastest lap now, so Alboreto in third place sets the fastest lap. We're watching Gerhard Berger on the screen in the Ferrari that's leading, but clearly Michele Alboreto very anxious to show that Gerhard Berger isn't the only quick Ferrari driver in Australia this weekend. So Berger way out in front. You can see as you look down Brabham Straight, emptiness behind him, and that's one of the Lolas, that's Philippe Alliot. Philippe Alliot parks the number 30 Lola. His teammate Yannick Dalmas, however, still going. And Dalmas, who's another newcomer to Grand Prix racing, has been running as quickly as Alliot for much of this race. They've been running almost nose to tail. And here you see Alboreto with Alain Prost still trying hard behind him. Alain Prost still trying to close the gap. It's quite a change to see Prost, who started on the front row, running lower in the race than he did at on the starting grid. And that's the other McLaren, that's Stefan Johansson. It's brakes smoking. It's spun to a halt on that tight corner. And absolutely clearly that's a braking problem for Stefan Johansson, because the brakes are smoking visibly and the car just didn't seem to want to stop for that corner. Stefan had to spin the car to a halt, and that is a sad end for what is almost certainly Stefan Johansson's final McLaren drive. Well, it is certainly Stefan Johansson's final McLaren drive. What we don't know is whether Stefan Johansson is going to be able to find another drive in Grand Prix racing for 1988. And Alain Prost is clearly losing touch with Michele Alboreto. Alboreto third, Alain Prost in a now more distant fourth place. Oh, and a crowded moment there. That's Andrea De Cesaris getting very sideways. De Cesaris almost spins, and Ivan Capelli, oh, so nearly hit him. A half spin and coming to a complete halt for Andrea De Cesaris in the only surviving Brabham, because Modena has retired. We understand at least partly because of driver fatigue. And that's not surprising, because to have your first Grand Prix on this so exhausting a track and in this tremendous heat is a very redoubtable challenge indeed, and Modena certainly did good things before he stopped. That's De Cesaris once more. He slides sideways. Look at Capelli going so very closely, just missing the back of the stationary Brabham there. De Cesaris has, however, restarted, and that's Yannick Dalmas being lapped by the leader, who is up with the back markers once more. He's got Adrian Campos in front of him. Ahead of Campos is Riccardo Patrese, now running in 6th place, and it won't be long before he gets lapped. There's Eddie Cheever there as well, lots of traffic, and squeezing there past Eddie Cheever very neatly indeed. Berger just doesn't want to delay for a second. He's dominating this race, and the way he slices through the traffic is so impressive. Gerhard Berger driving a very, very mature race indeed. Meanwhile, his teammate Michele Alboreto still in 3rd place, Alain Prost still in 4th. There they are. There's Alboreto going on his way into that tight right-hander, and Prost loses it! Prost spins under braking into the barriers for Alain Prost. Braking problems, I would guess, for Alain Prost also. Great black lines from the back tyres. Didn't seem to be very much braking at the front. That's not the sort of mistake that you would expect Alain Prost to make unless there was some mechanical reason for it. And we've already seen Stefan Johansson go out with braking problems, and I would guess that that's exactly what's put out McLaren number 1. We see it from another angle. He just goes sideways and backwards into the barriers, hits them not very hard, but hard enough. There's the outgoing world champion walking away, Alain Prost, the most winning driver in Grand Prix history, but he's out of the final Grand Prix of 1987. His championship title reign is over, and I'm sure he would have preferred to end his championship reign in a less ignominious way. So both the McLarens out. Ron Dennis was saying before the race he was worried about brakes particularly, and he was hoping that the brake problems would hit other people, but they've hit both the McLarens. Now Gerhard Berger is right on the tail of Riccardo Patrese in the number 5 Williams Honda. He set a new fastest lap, 1 minute 20.52, and that is a new lap record. That is now just about 1/5 of a second quicker than Nelson Piquet's lap record. Patrese, meanwhile, seems to be smoking somewhat. This is a replay of Prost. There he goes, sideways, pointing in the wrong direction, gently into the tyre barriers. We have confirmation, incidentally, that that was definitely terminal braking problems for the number 1 McLaren, just as it was for the number 2 McLaren. Pursued by the leading Ferrari, which will surely shortly lap it. And again, we see very noticeable puffs of smoke from Patrese's car as he changes gear. There's obviously some sort of problem with that car. It doesn't seem to be slowing him down at all, but Berger hangs back a little bit. There may be oil coming out of the back of that car, but now Berger nudges to one side and goes easily through. Patrese lets him go, as well he should. And so Berger is now by, and I'm sure that that lap following Riccardo Patrese's car will be nothing like as quick as the record lap that preceded it. And interestingly enough, Ayrton Senna in second place is starting to put the pressure on as well. There's Andrea de Cesaris coming into the pits. There is Jonathan Palmer now about to be lapped once more by the leading Ferrari. Palmer, incidentally, despite that early delay with a puncture which sent him into the pits after only a handful of laps, is now back up to second place in the normally aspirated category. He's neatly lapped in that right-hander by the leader Berger, and there is de Cesaris having a rather leisurely pit stop with the sole surviving Brabham. But Jonathan Palmer back up to second place in the normally aspirated category. Ivan Capelli, of course, still leading it. Capelli running now in 7th place, incidentally. So the normally aspirated cars are creeping up towards the top 6. There's been a lot of retirements, a lot of attrition ahead of them. Christian Danner, incidentally, is currently splitting those two normally aspirated cars. Christian Danner running at the moment in 8th place. There's de Cesaris out of the pit lane once more, and we watch from behind with that rear-mounted camera. You get an idea of the immense acceleration. There is Nelson Piquet, who was carved up more than somewhat by Andrea de Cesaris, who's just come out of the pits. There goes Piquet passing him now. So Nelson Piquet currently running in 4th place in the Williams Honda, being briefly delayed by Andrea de Cesaris. Still Ferrari first, still Lotus Honda second, still Ferrari third, but Nelson Piquet now back up to 4th place with the retirement of the two McLarens, with in 5th place Thierry Boutsen and in 6th place Riccardo Patrese. This high-speed backward look from de Cesaris's camera once more, mounted on the back of Brabham number 8, as he works his way around the twists and turns of the Adelaide circuit. And as we watch Piquet, I want to tell you about the progress of Ayrton Senna, because I mentioned that he was starting to wind in the leading Ferrari, and there you see the gap, 10.7 seconds. It was as high as 18, but suddenly Gerhard Berger is getting pit signals that Ayrton Senna is creeping closer and closer. Remember the tyres on these cars. We're looking at Michele Alboreto at the moment, incidentally. He's in 3rd place, but the tyres on these cars must now be getting pretty warm. There is Ayrton Senna, and Ayrton Senna, helped by the active suspension on the Lotus, has made an absolute art this year of making his tyres last. Having said that, as I look at his tyres on screen, I can see definite grooves worn in those slick treads, and that means that those tyres must themselves be starting to get past their best. But nevertheless, Ayrton Senna is driving his heart out. You can see the groove on the right front tyre, certainly. And look at Berger. Berger bouncing across the curbs now. He's had the pit signal. He's heard that Ayrton Senna, is getting closer, no doubt, on the radio communication between himself and the pits. He can talk back to the pits if he wants to, but the pit signals will tell him anyway that Ayrton Senna is starting to get closer, and suddenly we seem to have a battle on for the lead in the Australian Grand Prix here at Adelaide. Gerhard Berger, who has led virtually from the start, he briefly lost the lead from the grid to Nelson Piquet before establishing himself at the front of the field. He made up over a second a lap in the first handful of laps before settling down, and look at those showers of sparks. Showers of sparks coming off the back of the Ferrari. That can't be right. Has something broken at the back of that car? Is indeed a tyre going down, which would mean that things would be scraping. I think all four tyres look okay. He's certainly continuing at undiminished speed, but there are a lot of sparks coming from the back of that car at certain parts of the circuit. I think it's something dragging. We've had this on the Ferrari before. We had it indeed 2 weeks ago in Japan. There is Nelson Piquet in 4th place. Oh, and look at that. Great clouds of black from the front. I think that's a braking problem for Nelson Piquet. I think that was probably a brake disc, a carbon fibre brake disc starting to disintegrate. As we keep saying, this Adelaide circuit is wickedly harsh on brakes, and Nelson Piquet, I think, is in braking problems. He's certainly showing no signs of closing on the 3rd place Ferrari in front of him. But Gerhard Berger is visibly quick. He's flinging that Ferrari around the Adelaide circuit, driving as hard now as he was in those opening laps when he was opening up the gap. Nelson Piquet going very slowly. Piquet on his way, I think, towards the pits. Clouds of sparks still from the back of that Ferrari, but whatever it is, it's not slowing Gerhard Berger down, and he is responding to the pressure from Ayrton Senna. The gap has come down to 8 seconds, but by my unofficial hand timing, as Berger slides the Ferrari up the curbs, I think that the gap has gone back up into double figures. It's back up to 10 or 11 seconds now. Ivan Capelli, the leader of the normally aspirated class, is the next car for Gerhard Berger to lap. Berger getting very, very close indeed to Capelli, but he's going to have to find a neat way round there which doesn't damage his lead, and indeed he does. Lots of sparks still, but Capelli gets out of his way and in fact tucks in behind the Ferrari to try to stay with it. And here comes Nelson Piquet. Piquet slowly into the pits, up onto the jacks it goes, but I would guess that that's a braking problem for Piquet. Oh, and Capelli spins! Ivan Capelli spins away the march. Is he going to be able to restart the car? Because if Jonathan Palmer goes by, he's going to lose the normally aspirated lead. Nelson Piquet, the new world champion, sitting quietly in the cockpit of the Williams Honda, but it looks as though Piquet's race is run, and still Berger struggling through these back markers, trying to re-establish the lead over second man Ayrton Senna, which now he does seem to be able to do. He's on the tail of Christian Danner in the sole surviving Zach Speed. He goes past Danner as Danner gets the blue flag on the corner leading on to the start-finish straight. He's got Andrea de Cesaris ahead of him, and now that lead has gone back up again to 12.8 seconds. So after Ayrton Senna had put the pressure on, Gerhard Berger was able to respond in superb style. And Ayrton Senna still there in second place. And the screech of tyres was Andrea de Cesaris going off once more in the Brabham. De Cesaris parking the Brabham on the sand, but I can see from the flames behind that he's kept the engine running. He's found reverse gear, and Andrea de Cesaris blipping the throttle, lots of turbocharged flames out the back, and clouds of sand and dust, and de Cesaris gets back onto the circuit just in front of Roberto Moreno, who comes through in the AGS. So de Cesaris having a pretty busy and pretty crowded race. He's lost his left-hand front aerofoil on the front of that Brabham, so that won't help the handling very much, but he's determined to carry on in what has now become a race of attrition, because there are fewer and fewer cars running. We've got less than a dozen cars still running Yellow flags waving there, and that's Patrese, because Patrese has gone backwards off the track in that still smoking Williams Honda, and I would guess that finally the smoking engine cried enough. The Honda engine coughed its last, and quite a lot of oil probably came out with it, and I think that that was what put Riccardo Patrese sideways and backwards off the circuit. So Patrese's first drive for the Williams team comes to an ignominious end. We've seen the departure of both the Williams Hondas as Patrese walks back to the pits, and the marshals prepare to remove his abandoned Williams Honda from its dangerous position. Both the Williams Hondas out. We've already, of course, had Nakajima as an early retirement. Only one Honda-powered car still running, but it's running in second place. And just for a moment, we wondered whether Ayrton Senna was going to be able to close up on the Ferrari and make a battle for the lead. But Gerhard Berger responded, and Berger now back with a comfortable lead. I can see on Berger's left-hand front tyre quite a groove on the shoulder, so I shouldn't think his tyres are quite as good as they were, but it doesn't seem to be worrying Berger at all. He's built his cushion back up again from Ayrton Senna. He's re-established in a very impressive lead, and Ayrton Senna, I think now, has decided to content himself with second place. We've still got Michele Alboreto in third place. Ferrari's therefore first and third. In fourth place now, with the departure of the second Williams Honda of Riccardo Patrese, we've now got up into fourth place the Benetton of Thierry Boutsen. There is Ayrton Senna in now a lonely second place. Incredibly now into fifth place has come Jonathan Palmer with the normally aspirated Tyrrell, and with the spin that we saw from Ivan Capelli, that has put Palmer in the lead, and in fact Capelli didn't restart. Palmer in the lead once more of the normally aspirated category, and not very far behind him is Yannick Dalmas running in sixth place. So for the first time in his brief Formula One career, the young Frenchman Yannick Dalmas is also running in the top six, and we've only got 9 cars still left on the circuit, with in seventh place the Roberto Moreno AGS. Eighth is Christian Danner, and all on his own, ninth and a long way behind after at least 2 spins is Andrea de Cesaris in the dusty and rather battered looking Brabham number 8. So here comes this Ferrari, blipping his way through the gear changes, still looking as secure and as solid as he did right at the start when he made that great break and started his domination of the race. He comes round to complete another lap, and there's 1 lap left to go. You see the positions at the end of 80 laps, but Gerhard Berger has completed his 81st. He's got a 27.8 second lead. Michele Alboreto is over a minute behind him. Thierry Boutsen has been lapped, with Palmer and Dalmas 2 and 3 laps behind respectively. And so for the 82nd and final time, Gerhard Berger works his way round the suburban streets of Adelaide, and if he gets to the checkered flag, this is going to be a wonderful back-to-back win for Ferrari, because Berger won 2 weeks ago in Japan, and barring the most cruel misfortune on this remaining half lap, Gerhard Berger is going to win again here in Australia to make it 2 wins in a row for Ferrari, 2 wins in a row for him, and to confirm, if any confirmation were needed, that he is on his way to becoming one of the finest drivers in the world, and that Ferrari are on their way back to the top of the Formula One tree, which they've occupied on and off since Grand Prix World Championship racing began in its current form at the beginning of the 1950s. Gerhard Berger then reeling off this final lap, and he's in sight of the checkered flag. There is the man with the checkered flag. He waves it with excitement, and Gerhard Berger scores his 2nd Grand Prix win on the trot, Ferrari's 2nd Grand Prix win on the trot. The joy and the congratulations are rife in the pit lane. Well, that wasn't the end of the Adelaide story. Ayrton Senna may have taken the checkered flag in 2nd place, but in post-race scrutineering, his Lotus was found to have its brake ducts too big for the rules. He was disqualified. Michele Alboreto moved up to second place to make it a Ferrari 1-2. Everybody else moved up a place, and Roberto Moreno scored a championship point for AGS in 6th place. But we mustn't forget who was the 1987 world champion. Here's Nelson Piquet acknowledging the cheers of the crowd from a very elegant Jaguar XK120. And here is the final world championship position. 73 points for Piquet. The absent Nigel Mansell remains on 61. The disqualified Ayrton Senna remains on 57. The brakeless and retired Alain Prost remains 4th on 46. But Gerhard Berger moves into 5th place with 36 points, thanks to 2 wonderful end-of-season victories. In the Constructors' Championship, Williams-Honda, of course, already conclusive champions, but perhaps an omen for the future is Ferrari appearing in 4th place with 53 points. And that's the story of the Australian Grand Prix. That's the story of the 1987 World Championship. 1988 could be very different.
So